Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Janine Poggi, editor of Ad Age. Thank you so much for joining us today. With Pride Month underway, brands have begun rolling out campaigns and marketing initiatives aimed at showing support for the LGBTQ plus community. But oftentimes, these efforts can appear like marketers are simply checking a box. This year's Pride Month also comes in the wake of the Don't Say Gay and Texas's anti-trans bills, making it increasingly important for brands to do more than just slap a rainbow on packaging. Joining me today to discuss how brands should look beyond Pride Month to connect with the LGBTQ plus community is Diane Anderson Minshall, CEO of Pride Media, which is the owner of publications like Out and The Advocate. Hi, Diane.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for joining us today. So before we get started, for those of you who are watching at home, feel free to leave your questions or comments on our social channels, and we will try to get to them during this conversation. And if you like what we're doing here on Ad Age Remotely, please like, subscribe, share, or retweet this post. So Diane, you were named the CEO of Pride Media back in 2020, and at that time you became the first female to hold that post. What does that mean to you? What does that mean for the publication and the community?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that for me personally, it was a great honor to move into this role. I came up through the editorial side. I continue to serve as the executive editorial director of all of our brands. So I was really intimately involved in all stages. What I think it means for the company is women sometimes are brought in sometimes to do cleanup jobs when there's been difficulty in the past, that whole glass cliff experience. But a lot of times we bring different ways of managing and different ways of thinking. And I think that I've been able to use that time to really build an incredibly diverse team here, to turn the company around and build an incredibly diverse team that really is sort of really reflective of the LGBTQ community today. And I think that shows in our publications and our relationships with our partners and advertisers as well.
What have been your priorities for the company over the past 2 years? You mentioned diversity internally, but what else have you been really zeroing in on?
Well, paying all our bills off first, because I came into it. Yeah, came into it. We had a lot of debt. And so actually reestablishing relationships, and also for us, a bit of reestablishing, faith among our advertisers and our partners and those kinds of things. Diversifying has been a big issue. At the moment, our company is 60% people of color and 50% men, 50% women. Those are big changes from the past. And I think that shows in the kind of work that we're doing across the brands. And we've expanded, and we have a joint venture we've been working with this year with Equal Entertainment, expanding into the video realm. And we expect that to get even bigger in coming weeks. So yeah, those are probably the main things.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about expanding into video. There are lots of opportunities out there as the media landscape rapidly evolves. Can you talk a bit about how you're looking to future-proof the business?
Yeah, I think that, in many ways, publications are, there's a lot of people saying print is dead, but it really isn't. It's really just adapting and changing to what people want out of each of these media touch points. So for us, it's been really important to recognize that, our 2 million print readers are different from our 7 million digital readers, which are different from our 3.5 social readers, which are different from our video viewers. And so we're really trying to make sure that we're meeting people where they are, and that each of our brands really expand upon one another. There's a great saying about how good media companies, if you have multiple titles, you start at one publication and you move up to the next as you age as a consumer. And we certainly have never had that in the LGBTQ community. We've either had something aimed at very young folks or something aimed at a much more affluent, settled. So I feel like as a company right now, we really have a Gen Z brand, and we have a brand that is for, that is for more affluent readers interested in fashion. And then we have politics and news in between and those things. So I think part of those things is actually our content is really what we're diversifying, but also we've diversified in different ways, including our brand partnerships, which have really evolved from, I just sell you an ad, you place an ad with us, to a one in which we really are doing a lot of partnerships and developing video series and podcasts and, branded content in really different ways. It's really storyteller driven. That's really editorial driven, and having, advertising clients that sort of respect that we're bringing that almost as a studio to them. So I think those have been ways that have been really good for us.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about more of the brand partnerships in a little bit. I'm curious thinking about, the demise of the third-party cookie and how you grow readership in the subscriber base. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the good thing for us is that the demise of third-party cookies hasn't really impacted us. We don't use third-party cookies, and we are, because we've never want to have our readers. There's some confidentiality among some of our readers, and so we've never want their information to be tracked in that way. We definitely are going to be leaning more this year into acquiring zero-party data. And which is, kind of a higher level version of first party data. So I think that in that way, we're going to push a bigger push to get back into acquiring that via our newsletters for what will be 6 of our brands. And I think that in terms of, growth of the audience, we've really gone after the social market to drive to our digital audience. And we have relaunched 2 of our print titles onto the newsstands as solo titles in the last year. So it's an attempt to sort of diversify in each of our departments. And that's part of why we're driving growth there. And then we think we'll drive up some revenue growth in some ancillary marketing ways that we haven't in the past.
How are you looking at social platforms like Instagram and TikTok to build the brand and bring in new readers?
Oh, they're absolutely critical. Certain brands for Instagram is absolutely critical to building our out readership. Facebook has been, absolutely it's critical for building our advocate audience. And these are digital, but again, a certain percentage of digital transfers to print. And we also have we've moved into a lot of social first initiatives as well. So those are things that either begin on social, then move into either print or digital, or begin and end on social. And so we've developed a lot of things around that. What we've done so far is really master 3 major platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So really what our next thing will be when we have staffing in place to manage it is probably moving into the next platform. We just want to make sure we love TikTok. We want to make sure we're not moving to it too quickly without knowing why we're there, what we're there to do, and who we're trying to reach through it. So, but social's been just phenomenally important in the last 5 years for sure.
The other area that brands are trying to understand, learn, and navigate is the Web3 era and the move into Web3, things like the metaverse, NFTs. How are you thinking about this? And if there's a place for Pride Media to play in these areas?
Yeah, well, we've definitely been thinking about NFTs. I think, one of the things we thought about is the Advocate, which is almost 70 years old at this point, has these historic archives that everybody relies on. And if an old reader will post something on social media and it will just kind of go wild there, and it won't be something we've driven at all. But so there's a lot of clamoring for those kind of archives. So we thought about the potential of releasing some of those very special ones as NFTs. And there's certainly a cachet to some of the things we do without, particularly in the art fashion world, that could lend themselves to NFT. So I think what we're trying to do first is make sure everything we're doing now, we're doing well. And then put down the groundwork to make it into an NFT market. You don't want to go into it half-assed. I just heard from a brand that, put out a press release about their NFT, the publicist did, and then they heard from the brand, it was delayed. And I thought, oh, that's the worst thing for a publicist, right? So we want to make sure I just felt bad for her. But yeah, we want to make sure we do it right when we do it. But it's definitely, on our mind. I don't think you can not think about it at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned reestablishing and the evolution of brand partnerships for Pride. Over the past 2 years, in particular, the industry has really been making pledges to shift ad dollars to diverse owned and operated media channels. Have you seen this happen within the LGBTQ plus focused media companies?
Yeah, well, yes and no. We've personally had our best advertising this year in perhaps the last decade. The first year of the pandemic was tough for us, but it was tough for everybody. And we saw some brands that first year of the pandemic actually use that time to bond with LGBT consumers, like Bubbly from Pepsi leaned into our market when everybody else was delaying their campaigns and stuff. So I think that, that was sort of an interesting thing. But as companies shift ad dollars, I think, what's important for us is always to remind them that the imagery and language you use with Univision is not what you're going to use with Essence and BET, and it's not what you're going to put into Out or The Advocate or Pride Today, right? So one of the things we've seen people in their need to avoid is you really just can't take a program that's built for one marginalized group and then just plug in the next marginalized group, which is what we've seen some brands do. I'm not going to name any names here, but you've probably seen it and you're like, oh, the only thing you did was like, just maybe take out this Black person and added this gay person, and it doesn't work that way because, our language is different, for each of our communities. Again, yeah. We are not just monolithic.
Right. And you did say that the actual brand partnerships that you are doing, it's more than just like buying an ad placement, buying, inventory in that way. What do they look like? How have brand partnerships evolved over the past few years?
Yeah, for us, it's been really exciting working with companies to develop campaigns that go deeper than slapping a rainbow on a product and expecting it to sell. Because, my God, 20 years ago, if a company did that, we would be so thrilled as queer people. But that has changed, and consumers today really want to know that you're not just marketing to us, you're for profit or worse to line the pockets of politicians who do harmful things to us. Even 5 years ago, you would give us, if you gave back 50 cents of every rainbow sneaker you sold, that was considered good. Well, today's consumers, especially Gen Z, millennials, they are expecting brands to have year-round commitments and donations to LGBTQ charities that aren't really contingent on what consumers buy. So I think, and there's a number of brands that do this well. I can give you an example right here. I'm wearing the Coach's Pride cardigan from their Pride collection, and I'm a bit, anyway, I'm a bit of a Coach loyalist, but part of the reason why I'm a Coach loyalist is because they basically came out in the last few years. And it doesn't matter whether I buy this cardigan or not. The Coach Foundation is partnering and giving money to the Hedrick Martin Institute and the Pound Foundation and other organizations that, provide support and resources to LGBTQ youth. So I get a feel good about it. I become brand loyal. If I see Coach doing it, but not say Gucci or something, then I move over. And I think that's a lot of what we're expecting brand partnerships to do. And I think it's a lot of, one of the things that we go to, because we, sort of a few years back, my VP of sales, Stuart Brockington, and I kind of went to the market with our Pride 365 initiative, which is really reminding brands that, don't limit your focus to June for messaging and campaigns because it's the most crowded month, right? And our market is almost 4 trillion, I think, according to Entrepreneur, right? But that's not just the month of June. So in the month of June, you just get crowded out anyway. So think about, we have touch points and and days of importance nearly every month of the year. So it's History Month, or it's Coming Out Day, or it's Lesbian Visibility Day, or Transgender Day of Visibility. There's all these different things. So we first go to them and say, hey, let's think about, maybe you want to announce something in June, but you don't want to, but announce it and then follow it out, which is something that we're doing right now with Marriott. Basically, they were like, yeah, we don't want to, this isn't just a June stunt. We want to have this year-long commitment and work with you on this. So that's one of those things. And then also we asking brands first, before you advertise, before we develop these partnerships, please, always make sure there is an LGBTQ person in the room. We can be that person, but if you guys are thinking of ideas on yourself, don't do it yourself. You're just not going to do it well. Audit your own company. You do not want somebody to say, oh, look at that, they put out a rainbow sneaker this time, and yet there's 17 employee complaints about harassment against transgender employees. So make sure you're relying on your employee resource group and make sure you're auditing the company, and then give back. Figure out where you're giving back, because that has become just absolutely critical in these partnerships. Whether it's some nonprofit or in kind or something, there's something you can do that will give back, and that's going to win you a lot more, lot more of the audience if you do.
Are you actually hearing from brands, or brands coming to you to actually help them develop creative, make sure they're speaking authentically to the community, make sure that they're doing it right? Is that something that you are more heavily involved in, the company's more heavily involved?
Yes, absolutely. In the last 2 years, that is really, really just incredibly grown for us. And I think it's really smart for us. It's been a great way. We just, we haven't really announced this yet, so I can't tell much, but we have a big partnership with Google this year, and they came to us, and like many of our current clients, they really wanted to make sure that the representation and the voice of authenticity was there. They wanted to have, minimal oversight in many ways. Of course, any company wants to have oversight over what their campaigns are going to look like, but they really wanted our voices to shine. They made it very clear it had to be multicultural. It had to be, which great. Our brand partnerships team is super multicultural. We have young and old folks. We have lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgender people. Like, it's not just like, again, 4 white gay men in a room making decisions about what we should do, so it's been really great. And there's so many companies that have been coming to us, with those kinds of ideas and asking us to create. So we've really been operating like a studio, and some of them, like Las Vegas, I think Key West, we've actually done campaigns for them that were not for our titles, but were just their general campaigns that they put out in the world. And, or we developed in-house campaigns that showed everywhere, like we did something with Allergan for Botox, and that became their highest rated video, which was of all of them, not just the LGBTQ market, but like all of them. And so when we hear something like that, we really feel like, oh, we're doing something right here. Straight people are watching this video too. And that's really awesome.
Right. What are the challenges that still remain in bringing in new advertisers?
I think that there are some concerns with scale always. They'll say, well, why should I come into Out Traveler if I could afford to go into Travel and Leisure, and one of those things is we're always saying that, our audience is they're first adopters, but they're also intensely brand loyal. The LGBTQ market is so brand loyal that, Absolute for all of the 90s, Absolute was on the back cover of most major LGBTQ magazines. And that hasn't been the case for many, many years, but I still know people who will only drink Absolute because of it, and Stoli has been a long time backer. And so when people were dumping, quote, Russian vodka, the gay community was standing up for Stoli. So there's all these different ways in which they're very brand loyal. So we have to get over marketers thinking, oh, the scale isn't the scale isn't there, because the scale is there. Of the national LGBTQ market in the US, we reach almost half of it with our brands, our total company brands. So that's pretty saturated. You can't get that out of a mainstream title. But I think that, again, we are competing with mainstream titles now. And that's really different. We used to just compete with other titles that were in our market.
So how do you navigate that? Like, what do you do to sort of navigate and help brands get over that hurdle or of thinking of this as like a deficit in scale?
Yeah, well, I kind of think of that, we do kind of go back to them and talk about what is important to them in terms of, authenticity and DEI and reach. And then also, I think part of the thing is that we want to, explain to them how we do reach the people they're trying to reach. And you may reach these same numbers. So say you're going to get, say you're going to get 500,000 LGBT readers out of Out Traveler, or you could get 500,000 presumably LGBTQ readers out of Condé Nast Traveler. So when I'm going to them and I'm saying, well, what do you think is going to look better to the overall LGBTQ market? That you're in Travel and Leisure or Condé Nast Traveler, or that you're in Out Traveler. And are they able to amplify you to the entire community in the way that we can? Because basically our reach is just, it's unprecedented among LGBTQ audiences, and it's only getting larger. So I think that that's one of those things that we are, having to kind of explain how scale works. And we're explaining that on the holding company level at this point as well. So, but I think we're getting there. We have clients that are coming to us that have never been in our market before and are like, okay, we don't know anything, but we're interested. What do you think about our product and where it could go and who would have interest? And then we're like, oh yeah, we had a medical company that deals with, diabetes drugs. And so it's easy for us to pull up the percentage of, there are more LGBTQ Americans living with diabetes than there are all of the number of Americans overall living with type 1 diabetes. So that's a huge market. So I think we deal with that kind of thing. Yeah. And then we get over their fear of politics, because that happens too.
What are those conversations like?
I think it's getting better. I think one of the things is, so right now we can't ignore what's happening politically. Over 30 states have some anti-trans bill in consideration or in operation. Arizona, Oklahoma just signed theirs. Florida passed Don't Say Gay. So HRC came out with like 200 major US companies that just, said they oppose these anti-LGBTQ state legislation. And so what we're able to see from that list, you see people that are our clients, Capital One, Marriott, Macy's, Levi's, Starbucks, Gilead. But what you see from that list also is who is missing and who is now going to have to do some other steps. So, for example, of the airlines on the initial letter, American was on there and United was on there, but you didn't see Delta. So what immediately happens is, you have people not booking Delta. So we have to be, when we talk with Delta, we say, hey, look what's happening with you because of this. Let's get over, if you don't want to address this, you don't have to address this right now directly. Show your support at least, but if you want to address it, you're going to have, customers for life.
Pride Month obviously just got underway yesterday. What are some of the pitfalls for brands that are looking to, reach and connect with the LGBTQ plus community during the month of June? What advice would you give to brands that are out there with various marketing initiatives, whether it's, changing their packaging to reflect support or other things? How would you advise them to approach the month?
Yeah, I think, June is a very crowded month. So figure out how it is that you're going to stand out. What's going to make you different than the other 300 companies also announcing Pride packaging this month? It's no longer okay to just do Pride packaging. You have to have some other thing behind it, some other way you're connecting to the LGBTQ community. My argument is that through the LGBTQ media, at least it shows you're committing to our community versus doing pride packaging, posting that on your social, and just expecting the gays to swoop in and buy your rainbow stuff. So I think that, again, ways to give back are easy to be had, but they're important to have. And I think that just remember, June is crowded. I mean, if I were a marketer and I were looking at pride stuff, I would try to, announce the first week of June, and I would try to announce something that was a year-long campaign. I think having these limited edition things that start May 25th and in June 13th, they're probably great on a product scale or on a corporate scale, but I think that they're not as easy to commercialize, and they're not as easy to sell to our audience. So I don't know how many times we have follow-ups from people who are like in July or later in the year trying to buy holiday gift guide stuff, trying to buy, the pride stuff, and it's just gone. So find a way to keep those consumers. If they're going to buy your stuff in June, you really want to keep those consumers. So how are you going to do that?
And we mentioned, the idea of how brands should think about various bills. Don't Say Gay, Texas's anti-trans law. What would you advise brands, especially during this month, but year round, the need to respond to those and how they can do so appropriately?
Yeah, I think that, this is going to be the biggest quagmire for businesses, right? I think brands are right now trying to find out ways in which these are important to them. We ask people first, think about your employees. Your employees are being impacted by this. If you're a national corporation, your employees are being impacted by this. I think that, so as a good brand, I think that, letting us know what you're doing to support those people on the ground is important. I think that, it's hard not to support it. I think it's hard not to address it. I think there are ways for brands to obliquely address it without saying we're pulling out of Florida, but to say, what it is that you do support and why you think this should be overturned. If you can back that up with any kind of money or motion, well, that's even better, of course. But just being able to have you out there saying, we do not support this, we think this should be overturned is a big step, because there are still companies that are still afraid to do that. And I think that by not doing so, by being quiet, if you're a Florida company, if you're a Florida-based corporation right now and you have not weighed in on Don't Say Gay, we will assume that means you support it.
Diane, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on. Appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thanks so much, Janine. It was great being here. Happy Pride.
Well. As always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Lauren Chiardio, Arabella Breck, and Anna Sakula for helping to make this live stream happen. Be sure to tune in for our upcoming episodes of Remotely. You can find out more at adage.com/remotely. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Be well.